Power Rangers, I always focus on how good the story is, what the characters do, how the producers mess up said season, but I usually never talk about things like who's better, Time Force or Dino Thunder, what team would win in a fight. It's a very subjective topic. A lot of people pick who is better from just what the season looks like or who their favorite characters are. I'm going to look at all the seasons from MMPR to Ninja Steel, pick 10, which I think are the strongest ones, basing that off their powers, abilities, their allies who help them out, and what villains they fight. Then put those 10 in a list from lowest strongest to the best of the best, 2 top 10s in one.
Dino Thunder.
This season loosely continues the Zordon era by Tommy returning to the series. With him coming back, it gives the season a much stronger insight towards many aspects. Tommy's been a Ranger, he understands what it feels like for the new Rangers, he can say the right things to help Connor and the others out. He used to be evil, this helps Trent get free of the Dino Gem. Haley is a really good designer and intelligent person on top of very powerful gems that are the core power for the Zords, suits, and civilian powers. The villains are smaller in scope compared to Rita and King Mondo, so the team doesn't have to deal with galactic-sized threats, so the smaller Dino Thunder team can handle the bad guys really well. For power-ups, there's not many. Super Dino Mode and Triassic Ranger. Building Zords is restricted. I assume under normal conditions they could build Zords indefinitely, but due to Mesogog, Tommy and Haley stopped making more and simply found and recaptured the ones already built. Dino Thunder lands on my list from the sheer power that the gems hold. They powered everything. Could corrupt the user to evil at a small scale like Trent to mutations like Mesogog. The Dino Gems could support a cloned Ranger for months on end, power up the Red Ranger by using the other Dino Gems, eventually being able to sustain the other Rangers as well, so we know they could grow in power, as well as survive many years into the future and act like batteries in order to get their powers back.
Ninja Storm.
When you look at Ninja Storm for what the show did, it doesn't look that amazing. 2 small teams taking on 7 villains with not much at their disposal. But Cam did some amazing stuff without help from no one. The ninja powers are very strong, they just don't get many things. They only have a stronger sword and Shane gets a battleizer. The weapons could be configured into different stuff so they can defeat all kinds of monsters in difficult or odd situations. Even the Thunder Ranger staff weapons can be turned into various weapons. Their abilities control wind, water, earth, and thunder, the planet's basic elements. The Rangers could go underground, fly in the air, and control water, either in civilian or ranger mode, even simulate tsunami attacks that can hurt monsters. You could teach regular people to do this. No one's more regular than Tori, Dustin, and Shane. The Zords could be hidden in plain sight. I always joke that when Ninja Academy made money off the amusement park, cruise ship, and airplane they transformed into. For what Cam has to work with, just a simple basement and old scroll blueprints, the man does a ton of stuff. Not to mention the power of the scrolls, which allowed him to travel back in time to get the Lost Samurai powers, which was his fault. Thank you, Mr. Paradox. You can see how much power they have when Lothar stole the Samurai Amulet and revived all the monsters, then all the powers being sealed down below and surviving that whole year. While the team has your standard Zord combos and suits, the Ninja and Thunder Academies are much more powerful than they look.
In space.
If you consider the in-space team as weak, that does make sense, but I think they're one of the strongest teams out there. Look at it another way. Zane and Andros have 1 ship, no full team, Zordon's captured, and are fighting a combined force of Rita, Zed, Divatox, and the newcomer Astronema. All intents and purposes, the Space Rangers should have lost, but they didn't. With some help from Zordon planning ahead, the Earth Rangers meeting up with Andros, the Space Rangers pulled off the impossible. You could see all the planets that have succumbed from the evil forces fall. KO-35, almost Earth, and Aquitar. All these planets, yet 6 people, 2 robots, and Zordon stopped them. One of the things that space featured was people at their ends. Zane nearly dying from an old fight, Andros losing his sister, and the Earth Rangers all having suffered a huge loss on Earth. Not to belittle other seasons that had to deal with crazy stuff too, In Space was the rock bottom of a predicament. From episode 1, they even had to give up Justin, who did want to continue on. Only RPM and Lost Galaxy came close to this. For the tech, I did like the very clean nature of In Space. It of course felt like a Star Trek show, but it worked to counteract the rest of the season so it didn't always feel gloomy, a place where the Rangers could relax. You don't always have to be samurai getting power up after power up to be strong.
MMPR.
I know you're looking at me and saying, MMPR being one of the strong powers. This is where it all began. Most of the staples of the franchise aren't present. No bikes, no real suit power-ups, no battleizers, no 5 million Zord combos. But MMPR had 3 things going for it: Zordon, Ninjor, and the power coins. Zordon is probably the best mentor the show came up with. He is an alien that's in a tube. You'd think that would be very restricting, but the nature of the tube allows him to gather info and have other special powers, combined with his knowledge and Alpha's help. He was able to repurpose the power coins that Ninjor created to make the PR team. Same goes for Rita and the Green Ranger powers. The one thing that the original series did was show the coins were very flexible. They could be recharged even with being severed from the grid by magic, which also confirms Zordon's energy has to be tied to the Morphin Grid somehow. The powers could be augmented and powered up with the new Zords, plus Zordon created the White Ranger coin from scratch, inventing a new coin so that Rita had no control over it. When the original coins were badly damaged, Ninjor was able to bypass them and use new sources for them. While the coins still technically worked thanks to Adam being desperate and in space, I'd also point out the suits were very flexible. The newer shows don't really like showing the suits as things you can take off, while MMPR in the comics show that you can take the helmet off and even other parts of the suit and still have their abilities still accessible. The Zords were very versatile. The Dino Zords were able to switch to the Thunder Megazord. That means that they could technically use both versions of the Zord if they wanted to. Titanus was able to combine with the Ninja Zords. I would also assume same could be done with the Thunder Zords. There's a lot of leeway with the MMPR powers. This is why I consider the MMPR era to be a very powerful team. They may not be fancy like today's Rangers, but they're able to adapt and incorporate a lot of things, from magic to Billy's ideas. Look in Once a Ranger, the Defender vest was able to be used on an MMPR suit. That's flexibility.
Wild Force.
I have to list Wild Force. It's mainly for one thing. The suits in Magic Island aren't that impressive on their own, but they have access to a huge amount of Zords, 100 roughly. Not to mention they have a living Zord on the team basically acting like their god. They're always ready and available when needed. The powers are tied to the animals, not the other way around, and you could see that they can last a really long time. Plus the animals are alive. They can think on their own. Very few other seasons have done that. They choose the Rangers, so you don't have to worry about human error for the most part, or plans falling into enemy hands unless they're stolen. They can combine in various ways, even modify themselves like the Pegasus Megazord. The power animals even turn into the Rangers' bikes and Battleizer. Everything comes from them. I think these powers are very safe because of that. In Super Mega Force, Red Lion helped them out. He didn't need to be called by Cole. If you can find the island and you're good people, the power animals will protect the Earth.
Operation Overdrive.
This season is the Batman season. The billionaire businessman starts a Ranger team from scratch. Compared to many other seasons, they have a lot of leeway. They could build Zords often, so if they get in a bind, poof, secret sauce. Hartford cherry-picked the people, well, besides Mac. He figured out how to genetically manipulate people, which is probably how he got his billions. He doesn't have to rely on things such as the Dino Gems controlling powers. Those gems got stolen and Tommy's got screwed up. It is a weakness. Or like the SPD team being born as mutants with random abilities. The tech for Overdrive was pretty impressive. Everything was designed so that they could travel around the world, search for all the artifacts, which most are magic based. Dealing with all these factions, the Morpher could scan objects to see if they're the thing they need, as well as Hartford had the resources to access the Morphing Grid on a regular basis, and even add Adam's suit to the Defender Vest system. I would want a billionaire running a PR team, to a degree. You don't have to go through a lot of red tape. If you have to do something, you could just pretty much just do it.
Dino Charge.
The Energems are a very powerful energy source. With the help of Keeper, who understands how they work, Kendall has built a lot of stuff for the team. She can effortlessly make a Dino Charger and a Zord in minutes. Remember how long and complicated it was to get the Thunder Zords to operate in MMPR? The suits have a built-in armor mode, the weapons can be all combined together, the Dino Chargers can create alternate abilities for the Rangers and the Megazord, 20 different type of combinations, 2 cockpit power-ups, Tyler can turn into a Megazord with his supercharge mode, even the bikes can combine and separate. Everything they use is a form of weapon, which I thought was a pretty cool idea. The Dino Charge powers are almost limitless. You could argue they could be the strongest powers, period, since they could travel through time. They also stop your aging, so someone could live through history. There's so many things that these powers can do.
Lightspeed.
If you can't be a billionaire, the next best thing is to have a full organization behind a Power Rangers team. Lightspeed Rescue is a very unique season in the series. It was the first militaristic-owned team of Rangers that served the public. They didn't care about secret identities, just stop the demons from destroying Mariner Bay. It does have some drawbacks. There were times when the higher-ups were meddling in with the operations, like those stupid robots, or them complaining about how bad the team was because of one screw-up. That superhero mentality was strong in Lightspeed, but for the rest of it, they had a ton of support, not only the genius inventor, but a full science team to test and create new weapons and Zords. They even researched the demons for many years. It's why they created the Aqua Base. It was also a good way to keep the main city safe if they were ever attacked. At least it would just be confined to them. It was a well-executed plan, while other seasons had teams stumble at finding people by pure luck or desperation.
RPM.
RPM has to be number 2 for the fact that they had nothing. InSpace had nothing too, but Zordon did bail them out. Here, they only had themselves to work with, not to mention Dr. K creating Venjix. They're basically fighting herself, on top of all the messed up organizations that took K captive as a kid, to Colonel Truman interfering with K. The desperation you could see from both sides. Venjix would steal tech from K would steal tech back. I would argue that Dr. K is the smartest character in the whole series, not only because she invented everything, but she has so much control over the morphing grid. It's one thing to access the grid to create a team of Rangers, it's another to manipulate the grid, convert people into energy, and back again. Zordon didn't even make the power coins. He kind of took them, then worked them into his tech. The team was also formed from the most dysfunctional group of people. A spoiled rich girl, the army guy, the son that failed, a cyborg, an idiot, and 2 crazy people. The classic Zordon rules of never escalating a fight. No one cared in this season. Everyone just went right to Venjix. They didn't have a cozy command center. They fought dirty, worked with everything they could. It's funny, out of every bad guy that's invaded Earth, it took Earth itself to nearly destroy itself. That's called subtext Wild Force.
SPD.
I think the strongest team out of everyone has to be SPD. For the sheer size of resources they have. It's not just an organization on Earth, but the entire galaxy. SPD runs on countless planets, with countless personnel, alien tech, human tech, robots, everything is thrown into the show. If the Rangers need something new, they can do it. Break your morpher, here's a new one in 30 minutes. Cat needs to become a Ranger for 1 episode, here's a preloaded morpher. They have buildings turn into Megazords. There's Megazords that turn into giant guns. A Squad, B Squad, C Squad, cadets everywhere. Anyone can become a Ranger, and it's not a bad thing. Power Rangers can easily be molded into other types of operations, being cops is a natural one. Time Force did it, SPD did it in another bigger fashion. Before I wrap this up, there's probably 2 seasons you're thinking about, Zeo and Time Force. Zeo for the obvious line where the Zeo powers get stronger over time. You can argue they would be the strongest powers, period, but it doesn't happen. It seems for those powers to get stronger, the Rangers had to keep using them. Then they might have the same problem Jason had with the Gold Ranger powers. Would they become too strong for humans to use? They have to function like this. If they were naturally getting stronger, then they would have been immensely stronger at the start of Zeo. They had to be created thousands of years before, plus the Rangers end up just getting rid of the powers in the Turbo movie. I just can't care about them that much. Time Force would arguably also be the strongest PR team. Their tech comes from 1,000 years in the future, but nothing was really impressive beyond the fact that they could travel through time. They couldn't send any other humans because the time ship was blown up, so all they could send was the Zords. Then we've seen the TF Rangers used in other seasons. There's no real advantage. The Matrix movement ability isn't anything powerful, it's cool looking. Even when they bounce off the universe when they freeze time in the Megazord, that's all it is, a good ability. Maybe it's because they changed history. SPD was spawned by the Time Force tech. It ended up being moot by the time the future came around. The only real power they have is to rewrite history and erase minds. Any of the seasons I didn't mention, they aren't bad. They're just generic, basic teams. I know some would argue Mystic Force and their magic. I want to remind you that they were people stuck in a little part of a forest for many years. This is my list. Most people aren't going to agree with it, and I know there can be really good arguments for seasons like Lost Galaxy and Super Megaforce. What do you think are the strongest teams? And if you have a suggestion on a subject you'd like me to cover, leave a comment down below. Next week, I'll cover 10 things that I hope Beast Morphers will do to bring back a level of quality the series has lost.